And now, it's time for the Podcast Preacher. Here's your host, Derek Evans.
As an evangelist now, it's the number one, question that I encounter when I'm talking to people who are agnostic or atheist, whatever it may be. And in my former days, as an atheist, this was the number one go-to for me. I remember talking to people regularly about this and saying, hey, if your God allows these terrible things to take place, then that's your God, not mine. And that was my number one thing that was the well that I went to on a regular basis. And so there's a couple of really, really important things here, and there are answers in the Bible for this. And so I'm going to go over that today. It's in 1 Peter. And also just a couple of things from a mindset standpoint to sort of think about when we try to relate, the life that we live to the divine life of the Lord. So it's two different things. So first and foremost, clearly, if you talk to most people, if you go to an apologetics class in seminary, like I did last semester, you will hear them say, "Listen, we have free will. God wanted us to have free will, therefore we have it. Free will provides the opportunity for evil. So in an environment in which free will exists, the opportunity for evil will also exist. And there's no way around that. But clearly, God wanted us to have free will. And so then the question isn't really, is evil wrong? The question is free will wrong? And that's kind of what we have to take a look at. So today, we're going to take a look at two big things. Number one, our calling. According to the Bible, our calling, your calling, my calling, what we've been called to do actually requires evil to exist. And number two, evil itself may not be what you think it is. Probably isn't. So let's take a look at those things. So I'll read the scripture to you first here. So this is 1 Peter. So Peter's writing this letter. He's in Rome. He's writing this to encourage the non-Jewish Christians or the Gentile Christians in the Roman province of Asia Minor. He's writing this letter to encourage them because they're facing major persecutions. They're encountering a tremendous amount of evil, tremendous amount, terrible things. So he's wanting them to stay strong through these persecutions, and so he wrote them a letter. And Peter's second letter is a different situation altogether, where he knows he's going to die at that point. But in the first letter, he's really just trying to encourage these people who have come so far, but they're still facing so much tough stuff. So this passage is massive. If you haven't read this, then hopefully I can impart this onto you today a little bit and encourage you to look into it. So 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. Do not repay evil for evil, or reviling for reviling. Reviling is bad talk, speaking poorly to someone, yelling at someone, calling them names, things like that. But on the contrary, bless. For to this you were called. So he says, bless, for to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. So let's take a look at this real quick. Let's unpack this, because he just told us that we have been called to bless people who have done evil to us, people who have reviled us, spoke poorly of us. Our calling is to bless those people in order that we may obtain a blessing. And I always take a look at things like this and try to compare it to the life of Jesus and what we know about his life. And we assume that evil is bad. But what if we don't really understand the totality of how what happens here on earth interacts with what happens next? What if the evil things that are happening here were just opportunities at something greater for us spiritually? Jesus sure did think so, because what did Jesus do while he was here? He ran right to the evil. He ran right to the evil, and he let the evil do with him what it wanted to do. Now, it was part of a prophecy, and I understand all that stuff, but look at what he did. Jesus used evil to forgive the sins of all of us. He, through evil, the evil that was done to him, a sinless man who was tortured, killed, crucified. Through that evil, he was able to save all of us. So my point is this. We think that the evil may just be all bad in itself, but what if the evil is actually a doorway to something greater? Hold on to that for a second. So Peter is telling us that it's our calling to bless those who revile us or who do evil to us. This is why we are all here. So why does God allow evil to exist? It's not that God allows evil to exist necessarily, but that evil is important to exist in order for us to fulfill our job. Our goal is to encounter evil, not run from it, but to encounter it and to bless it. Because this is how the divine deals with the bad parts of man, the worst of man, the worst parts of free will, the worst parts of what happens to someone run amok, the worst parts of what happens when Satan gets involved. The worst of it. God's people know how to deal with it, and Jesus was the ultimate example of that. So that's what Peter's telling us to do. So how can we do that? How can we bless evil if evil is not there? So we need it to be there. And Peter's basically saying here that every evil is an opportunity for us to do what we were called to do. So when you encounter an evil, when you encounter a serious challenge, when you encounter a really bad situation, if you can see it through the teaching that Peter's giving us here, he's telling us that that evil you're encountering is actually the chance. It's an at-bat. It's a chance for you to get up to the plate and do what you've been called to do by God. That makes it a really powerful situation when you look at it that way. Maybe will you go out and seek evil now? Where is the evil? Let me go get another at bat for the Lord. That is what Peter is teaching here. So the obstacle, or what appears to be the obstacle, is actually the opportunity. The material obstacle, the earthly obstacle, is the divine opportunity. That is what Peter is preaching here to these individuals who are facing extreme situations, extreme circumstances. So what evil have you perceived in your life that you can now see as an opportunity? This is the takeaway. What evil have you encountered that have you perceived that you can now look at and go, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to be Christ-like. And people always will say things, they'll ask me like, are you Christian? Or, this things like, I always say, I'm a Christian. Because Christian can mean a lot of different things, but if you're a Christ follower, then you're always trying to say, what would Jesus do? I remember when that was like a saying, a hashtag or something, before there were hashtags, what would Jesus do? And we can all live our life thinking along that way. It's very difficult to do, obviously, but what Peter is teaching us here is that the ultimate lesson that the Lord taught us while he was here is to bless the evil that comes after you. That means the person who steals from you, cheats on you, talks trash about you, puts you down, calls you names, makes fun of you, holds you back, hits you, abuses you, hates you, doesn't really know you, sabotages you, hurts you or lies to you. Bless them. This is your calling, and it's what Jesus did. So the evil in this world is there to be a window of opportunity for us to be provided a blessing. But it requires that we provide the blessing in the face of the evil first. So we have to bless the evil in order for us to receive the divine blessing. That is the teaching that Peter is giving us here in 1 Peter 3, verse 9. So ultimately, just look at Jesus as the example. He ran toward the evil. He let the evil do what it wanted with him, didn't resist it. He loved on those who persecuted him and did evil on him. Peter knew this very well. Peter knew Jesus very well. It's the reason why I like reading Peter's letters, because this is a guy who walked with Jesus for years. This is a guy who was Jesus' number one. And he knew Jesus really well. He knew what he said. He knew what he did. This is a guy we should listen to. This is a guy who knew the Lord very well. I believe we can trust that Peter knows what our calling is according to the Lord. And I believe that's what he's trying to convey to us in this message. So why does God allow evil to exist? Do we know the exact answer? Well, we know what Peter said. Peter said that it needs to be there in order for us to do what we've been called to do. Thank you for watching. I hope that helps in some way. If it does, you can please share it. I'm going to pray for everyone who is watching this right now, and then we'll close out. Everybody have a great night. Father, thank you for giving me this message so that I can impart it upon your children. I hope that they receive it with the spirit that you provided them, Lord, and I just hope that and pray that you'll provide all of us with your spirit so that we may do your will here on this earth, and we may find you in heaven when the time comes, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys.